Hey up guys, I'm Mason, the blind wrestling fan, and this is the WITD Weekly podcast number 9. If you enjoy this episode, you know what to do. Last week, I asked the question, where the hell is Big E? What are WWE doing with him right now? What are they going to have to do to get him back on track? And this week, they answered that question in a fairly satisfying manner, to be honest. First things first, let's talk about last week's SmackDown. Sami Zayn, the Intercontinental Champion, goes one-on-one with Daniel Bryan. It's a great match, which isn't surprising because it's Sami Zayn and Daniel Bryan. I'm not sure it's even possible for them to have a bad match. The most memorable spot of the match is Zayn giving Bryan a brainbuster on the apron. That is nasty, mate. You would have to pay me a lot of money to take that bump. I would not want to be in Bryan's shoes there. Zayn is struggling to put Bryan away and decides that he's gonna do a runner. He goes backstage, Bryan chases him where he gets laid out by Jey Uso. We'll get to him more later. Zayn takes advantage of this, legs it back to the ring, and Bryan loses by countout. Later, Zayn is confronted by Big E. E tells Zayn that he's built quite a house, a rickety house, that's built on loose turnbuckles, countouts and vertigo. It's a house of cards that's one flick, one gust away from being blown over. Zayn says that he thought Big E was different, but he's just like everyone else. He wants to diminish the accomplishments that Zayn has achieved. He says that Big E's just jealous because last time he won the Intercontinental Championship was a long time ago and nobody even remembers it. He's jealous because Zayn has been winning matches in 10 seconds. Big E concedes. He says Zayn's right and offers to shake his hand, which Zayn accepts. But he shouldn't have because Big E was just luring him in. He holds the handshake on for 10 seconds, crushing Zayn's hand as he does so, slowly counting to 10. When he gets to 5, he goes, "You remember the 5 count?" Which I popped for. Nice reference. I always loved the 5 count and I do wish that he could do it again. Maybe not full time, but at least for one match. This was great. I really enjoyed it. This is definitely the way to get Big E back on track. Look, I love Sami Zayn right now. His paranoid conspiracy theorist character, everyone's out to get me, WWE wants to keep me down, nobody wants to recognise how good of a champion I am. It's all great, especially while he's being such a coward. I think that Zayn is absolutely on fire right now. The fact that he went from being such an underdog babyface that you could completely relate to, that I really wanted to win all of his matches, and now is this absolutely despicable, cowardly heel, just proves how good Zayn is as a competitor. And a match between him and Big E could be really entertaining, and Big E as the RT champion, again, just a great way of getting him back on track, building him up, giving him some singles wins, and taking him into the Mania season where hopefully he can face off against Roman. I thought that this was absolutely brilliant. Everyone involved was on fire. It's always good to see Bryan in a match. Zayn puts in a great performance. Big E has this low level intensity that's slowly building and they're actually managing to get serious Big E, and I just think it all works really, really well, and I'm just completely looking forward to seeing Big E and Sami Zayn going one-on-one. I never thought I'd say it, but I actually felt quite sorry for Baron Corbin this week. He got absolutely screwed by the Mysterio family. Rey Mysterio has an interview where he talks about what he's thankful for. This year he got to see his son's career take off, his daughter become a mature, confident, outspoken woman, and he's also thankful for the fact that Murphy finally realised what a piece of garbage Seth Rollins is. But he's interrupted by Baron Corbin, who talks a lot of trash. He basically calls Rey a joke and says the biggest joke of all is that Rey didn't pass on any of his in-ring talent to his son, but did pass on his poor judgment of character to his daughter. He says, "Do you really think that Murphy's going to be around till next Thanksgiving, or is he just riding the coattails of the Mysterio family name while it's still worth something?" This leads to Murphy and Corbin having a match, and the Mysterio family just screw Corbin. They're at ringside and they just keep getting involved. At one point, Corbin hits a deep six and Ray interrupts to make sure that he doesn't get the pin, and Dominic gets involved on multiple occasions, including the finish where Corbin gets his foot on the ropes and Dominic pushes it off, which isn't seen by the ref, and Murphy picks up the cheap, hollow victory. I'm not particularly sure where they're going with this. It's WWE. They could think that this wasn't necessarily a bad thing for the Mysterios to do because they're doing it to a bad guy. But at the same time, they could be heading for a Mysterio family heel turn, which I think would be pretty intriguing. I'd quite like to see Dominic and Murphy as a tag team. There's not a lot going on in the SmackDown tag division, so Murphy and Dominic facing off against the Street Profits, maybe picking up a tag title win, could be pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with this. It's a really intriguing start to what I hope is a proper storyline, rather than just an isolated case of them cheating to win, because it was really confusing considering that Murphy's only just turned face and they've spent months and months fighting against Seth Rollins. It just seems a bit random for them to turn heel now, but if they do it and they do it right, then it could actually be pretty entertaining. Bianca Belair defeats Natalya by roll-up. Yeah, I wasn't particularly happy about this. Don't get me wrong, I'm not enraged by it or anything, but I just don't see why Bianca Belair, who should be the most dominant woman on SmackDown other than Sasha Banks, needs to beat Natalya by roll-up. So they have this match and Bayley's on commentary. She's being her arrogant heel self, challenging Michael Cole to a match, talking trash to Bianca. It all spills to the outside at one point and Bayley ends up getting clocked. So at the end of the match she jumps up on the apron, she's trying to distract Bianca, but it actually ends up making things go pear-shaped for Natalya, who gets more distracted than Bianca does, and then Bianca rolls up Natty. And it's not anything against Natty here, because I actually really like her. I think that she deserves the status that she has, that legendary veteran status. But I just feel like Bianca should be getting built up here and be given some solid wins, going on a tear, being undefeated for a while so that they can build her up. At the end of the day, she's now going to be facing off against a former women's champion, the longest reigning SmackDown women's champion, and it just seems a bit dodgy for her to need to win by roll-up. Now, granted, she might not necessarily have needed to win by roll-up, but she did, and I just can't say that I was particularly happy with it. Now, I'm not an expert, I'm not a booking expert, but it's just not the way that I would have done it, and I wasn't particularly pleased by it. So yeah, in terms of Bianca versus Bayley, I think that'll be an absolutely killer match, but I just wasn't happy with her winning by roll-up because I felt like it was a little bit cheap. We get a fairly short but pretty decent promo from Carmella. She says that now that Bayley and Sasha have stopped playing the middle school games, the WWE Universe is going to find out who the most dominant woman on SmackDown is. She says that she used to have everything that Sasha has, the title, the spotlight, the adoration of the fans, but she made the mistake of starting to do stuff for us. She was doing the dancing and all of that lot, and she ended up losing everything. So now she's not doing anything for anyone. She's calling the shots, she's giving the orders, and then Sasha Banks attacks her, and that's that. And I have no problems with this whatsoever. I always enjoy Carmella on the mic. She's just got a great handle of what her character is, and she's just really good at cutting promos, and Sasha returning the favour, just a good way to build to them two having a match, so no complaints there whatsoever. You know, when you're in one of those situations where you just don't feel like you can do anything right, and no matter what you try, nothing's good enough. Yeah, that's Jey Uso's life right now. Despite helping the tribal chief win his match against Drew McIntyre, he was still in trouble this week. Roman still wasn't happy, and he gets another dressing down. He gets told off yet again. This was some great stuff this week. I really really enjoyed it. So Roman says that he never asked for Jey's help with Drew McIntyre. In fact, he told him to go home, and he says that he's not happy right now. SmackDown, Roman's team lost at Survivor Series, and he reiterates what he said at the pay-per-view. They lost because they wouldn't listen to Jey, because they don't fear him, they don't respect him, which means that they don't respect Roman, they don't respect the family name, and if they don't respect the family, then who are they? Perhaps Roman is some wannabe bitch begging for scraps in the backstage. He says that's how Jey's making him feel with his failures, and he doesn't like it. The delivery from Roman, absolutely brilliant. So cold, so vicious, just great. This sends Jey on the warpath, and he just goes round all night, just battering people. Otis comes out for a match, Jey lays him out, just batters him with a chair. Like I said earlier on, he goes after Daniel Bryan, and then he ends up facing off against Kevin Owens because Owens gets involved and talks trash to Roman, and Roman basically says, "Deal with this for me, Jey, do your job." So, as Jey and Owens are facing off, eventually Jey comes to the conclusion that it's not about winning, it's about making Owens pay. So he decides, screw this, and just goes after Owens with a chair, getting the disqualification, but also managing to deal out some punishment to Owens. It could have ended up alright for Jey. Roman might have actually been pleased with him, but Owens, putting in the best performance that he's had in so long, hits a stunner on Jey and then starts laying into Jey with chair shots of his own. He just absolutely lays into Jey for a couple of minutes while he's talking trash to Roman, screaming down the camera, "Come on, come and face me, I'm the head of the table, I fear no one." And he makes a point of the fact that Roman says that he's all about family, but he's not willing to come and protect Jey. And all of this was just so great. You've got Roman's arrogance, his cold demeanour towards someone that he is his family, and he says that he's all about family, but like Owens points out, he's not there to protect him, he's not got Jey's best interests at heart, it's all about how it makes Roman look. Then you've got Jey just trying to get into Roman's good books, trying to do what he wants, and Owens just putting a stop to that and making things worse for Jey. And it's all just, man, it's such a good storyline, and this was my favourite Owens. I am not necessarily a huge Owens fan. I really enjoyed some of his work, and then I haven't been bothered about other parts of his career since he's been on the main roster, but this was so intense. His screaming down the mic and just the attitude towards Roman was so good, and I'm instantly hooked. I can't wait to see them having a match at TLC, some sort of insane stipulation match, maybe a ladder match or something like that. It just all worked out so well, and this, like I said, was my absolute favourite Owens that we've had in so long. It instantly got me invested and made me want to see Owens kick the hell out of Roman and just kick the shit out of him, Owens. I'm not an egotistical man, my friends. If I say something that's wrong, if I have a bad take, you're gonna hear me admit it. And this week is one of those times, because last week I was a bit harsh on Asuka and Lana. Look, I'm still not happy with the way that Lana was completely and utterly thrilled at the way that she became the sole survivor, but I was kind of harsh on having Asuka and Lana as an odd couple tag team. I sort of made it seem like it was a bit stupid, and then this week they completely proved me wrong. They had a match against the women's tag team champions Nia and Shayna, and Lana put in a pretty plucky performance. At one point she comes off the top with a crossbody, and then she gets caught by Shayna, who rolls through into the Kirifuda clutch, and it's all looking really bad. Nia tries to stop Asuka from breaking it up, but Asuka does end up being able to. Shayna gets mad, and then Lana scoops her up and manages to pick up the win for her and the women's champ. In a network exclusive interview, they're asked about it, and Lana says that she is thrilled to be working with Asuka. She's one of the best in the ring, she's a great friend, a great mentor, and she's teaching her so much. Asuka is being her typical plucky, happy little self, and she starts singing, "Lana is the best, Lana is the best," and Lana starts singing, "Asuka is the best, Lana number one." And they seem so happy, and then they just go running off together to presumably celebrate their victory. And my god, was there so much chemistry there. I was wrong. I thought that these two would not gel together at all, but there was somehow just so much chemistry there, and I now kind of want to see them become women's champs, tag team women's champs, because I think that they could do really good work. I would love to see Asuka make Lana improve, have this storyline where Asuka's teaching Lana how to be a winner, and eventually have Lana pull off a nice clean win against someone like a Nia or a Shayna, and maybe pick up a win at TLC. The fact that Shayna managed to get scooped up by Lana, at the same time, that is sort of disappointing, because I was a huge Shayna Baszler mark when she was in NXT, and it sort of speaks volumes how far down she's come, that she was nigh on unbeatable in NXT, and now she's getting scooped up into a roll-up by Lana. But at the same time, in terms of building a new star and making Lana into a winning wrestler, I think that this storyline with Asuka could be brilliant, and I will eat my words from last week. I was wrong. This was great. AJ Styles is the new number one contender to Drew McIntyre's WWE Championship, and this match will be awesome in my opinion. I think that those two will just have some great chemistry. I'm not really sure whether they've had too much interaction in the past, but both guys are so good that I just feel like there's no way that it'll be a bad match. That number one contenders match, AJ was probably the best one to come out of it. It is a shame that it wasn't Keith Lee, but at the same time I feel like Keith versus Drew could be a massive match down the line, and it's something that they should just maybe save up until Keith has got a little bit more momentum. And I am really glad that it wasn't Riddle, because he is driving me up the wall right now. I can't stand what they're doing with Riddle right now. I loved him when he was in NXT. He was just this chill, laid back, quietly funny guy that when he got in the ring, all of that silliness dropped away and he just became this intense badass that would kick your head in. And now he's just ridiculous. The pizza flavoured yogurt thing from a few weeks back, and then this week the interaction that he had with AJ where he approached him backstage. AJ basically wanted nothing to do with Riddle and his silly bollocks. He told Riddle that this was a serious occasion, and Riddle basically said, "Yeah, I know," and then went on to be a silly bastard and talk about how AJ reminded him of his rabbit, because the rabbit is furry and cute, and so is AJ, and AJ gets really mad at Riddle calling him cute and gives him a chop, and he's like, "Is that cute?" And then I just can't be doing with it. I'm not a fan of it at all. I feel like the Newly Bros thing happened and he has never ever recovered, and I don't think that I necessarily minded the Newly Bros thing at the time. I think when he first got together with Pete, the ridiculous little skits that they were doing with the Dusty Rhodes statue was pretty funny, and then they did the Newly Bros thing, and it just feels like since then he's never recovered. They saw that he could do comedy, and it's like, that's it, now you're a comedy guy and you can't do anything else. During that triple threat, there was a couple of cool things. There was a bit where Riddle got Keith in an arm lock and Keith just curled him like a weight, and it was that was pretty cool. Riddle gave AJ an exploder out of the corner at some point with shades of that Riddle that I like. And then at the end, Riddle and Keith Lee were going at it. Riddle's hitting Keith with strikes, trying to get him down. He finally does, but AJ swoops in with the phenomenal forearm and picks up the victory. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to seeing AJ and Drew going at it. I think that they could do some really cool, innovative things, and I'm looking forward to that speed versus power, AJ being a veteran. I mean, I say that, but it's not like Drew hasn't been around for a long time, so I think that they're just going to do some really cool stuff. So AJ as the number 1 contender was definitely the right decision in my opinion, but he's going to be getting involved in a little bit too, so we'll get to that later. I'm really not sure what I think of this Randy Orton and the Fiend rivalry right now. I'm not sure where it's going to go, and I feel like Randy's going to come out on top again, and I don't want that. I really don't. I don't think that it's the right way to go at all. The Fiend and Alexa Bliss have got such a good thing going on right now. Bliss is putting in the best performance I think that she's put in since she came to the main roster. Her character work right now is just flawless. It's so good. So this week Randy is on a moment of bliss, and he talks a lot about how similar but different he and the Fiend are. He says that one of the main differences is that the Fiend wears all of his pain and his suffering on the outside for everyone to see, whereas in Randy keeps all of his pain and suffering on the inside. He tucks it down deep so that he can fit in with society. He talks about the fact that they both hear voices in the head, which is a similarity. That's what he says. He says there's a similarity. I think he just starts stumbling there a little bit, because he says it's a similarity, but the difference is the voices that Bray Wyatt hear are my voices. I don't feel like it made a lot of sense, but so he's saying that the Fiend hears voices and it's Randy Orton's voices. I don't really get that, but he says that last time he had to figure out what Bray Wyatt's weakness was, what his vulnerability was, and he did, and then he burnt it down. So he knows what he's got to do this time. He's got to find the Fiend's weakness, and he thinks that he has. It's Alexa Bliss, and he's trying to tempt the Fiend out, and the Fiend actually does come out, which is... I don't know. He comes out, and to be honest, if we were just going from my point of view, I wouldn't even really know what happened from there, because it, the screeching starts, and after that, it all just sort of, moves on. But I have seen from recaps that the Fiend comes out, and he's got his arms outstretched, and Randy dumps Alexa into the Fiend's arms, and then does a runner. And I don't know. I don't know whether I think that the Fiend should be that concerned about Alexa. I know that in terms of the Bray Wyatt character and Alexa Bliss, they're being presented as friends, and in fact in this interview Alexa Bliss does say that the Fiend is one of her best friends, which is fine, but at this point we're not that far into the Fiend's career, and I don't feel like we should be humanising him this much. I don't know whether we need to have him... It's just a rerun of the Sister Abigail thing, like this woman is his weakness, and obviously they could turn it round next week or in a couple of weeks. I might have to come back and say, okay, I was wrong about that, but right now I feel like Randy is outsmarting the Fiend, and I don't think that that's the right way to go. I do like Randy's promo work here, and I love the way Alexa Bliss is trying to play mind games with him, asking who's manipulating who's actually in the driver's seat here. But in terms of the Fiend being all concerned about Alexa and coming out with his arms outstretched and wanting Randy to hand her over, I don't know. I'm not sure whether I feel like that is the best thing to do with him. You should let me know in the comments what you think of this dynamic, because I haven't quite made my mind up about it yet. Time to talk about Retribution again. Yay! This should be fun. What a load of crap is going on with them right now. I just don't even know what to say. So Mustafa Ali has a bit of a promo against Ricochet, and he says, why can't you see that you've been pushing the same boulder up the same mountain for years, only to fall back down week after week? Why can't you see that everything that's happening to you right now has already happened to every member of Retribution? We've been discarded, forgotten, disrespected, our dreams have turned to nightmares. He throws over to Slapjack, who says that he used to be blind to the corruption, but Ali showed him that he'd been discarded and forgotten, left a husk of a man, and that he could be a weapon of Retribution. And then Ali says that tonight, in a one-on-one match, Slapjack is going to make Ricochet see what Ali sees. And then it basically takes every member of Retribution to beat Ricochet, the finish of which is just magical Mr. Tom Phillips shouting "Slapjack" all over Ricochet, and that's so informative. There's just all sorts of shenanigans in that match. Mace and T-Bar keep trying to get involved, Ricochet wipes them out, Dana Brooke appears at one point and slaps Ali, which leads to the next bit of Retribution booking, which is Reckoning / Mia Yim, who apparently gets unmasked. Obviously, I wouldn't have known that because commentary aren't going to mention it, but recaps. And she gets unmasked, which is embarrassing. And what's also embarrassing is Mia Yim, a woman who could have legit been an NXT champion earlier this year, could have been the NXT Women's Champion, and now she's losing to Dana Brooke. Again, I feel like I have to say this sort of thing a lot. No offence to Dana Brooke, I like her, I feel like she's great, but in terms of actual kayfabe character standing, who was the last person to lose to Dana Brooke? I don't know. I can't remember, but I don't feel like a group that you're trying to supposedly build up to be this threatening, chaotic group, then just losing this easily to Mia Yim. The whole faction has to try and put down Ricochet, and then Reckoning loses to Dana Brooke. And then Mustafa Ali on the outside is screaming, "You have the audacity to fail me? There's no failure in Retribution." Have you not been paying attention, Ali? There is plenty of failure. There's plenty of failure in Retribution. I just don't know. It's such a shame that they attached Mustafa Ali to this instead of just turning him heel and letting him have this character on his own. Instead, they attached him to this bullshit gimmick, and I'm just ready for them to just disband the group. I really hope that the people involved can be saved afterwards, because I really don't want this to hamper them later on, because Dominik Dijakovic is great. Shane Thorne is pretty good. I haven't seen too much of him other than the stuff that I've seen in NXT, but I enjoyed the matches that he was in. Mia Yim is great. Mustafa Ali is great. And this gimmick is just driving them all into the ground, and I just can't stand it. For God's sake, just get your act together. You know what? I'm quite enjoying the WWE Championship scene right now. I feel like Drew McIntyre has got to have eyes in the back of his head, because there are people coming for that championship left, right and centre. You've got The Miz with the Money in the Bank briefcase gunning for him, with Morrison in his corner helping him out. AJ Styles is the new #1 contender. He's got his big bodyguard helping him out. And then in the background, just bubbling, stewing away, is this thing with Sheamus, where we don't know whether Sheamus is going to betray him or not. And I just think that it's working really well. So Sheamus appears on Miz TV this week, and Miz and Morrison are just trying to drive a wedge between these two best friends. Sheamus really doesn't want to be on Miz TV. He is just ready for Miz to get to the point. So Miz starts off with one tact. He says that Sheamus got Drew that awesome sword and his family heirlooms, and what did he get in return? But Sheamus just laughs him off and says when he gets a mate a present, he doesn't expect anything in return, because he's just not that kind of guy. So Miz changes tact. He says that if Drew was a true friend, he'd have already given Sheamus a title shot, which he hasn't. Where's Sheamus' title shot? But Sheamus again just laughs the Miz off. He doesn't care. He thinks he's full of crap. So the Miz gets angry and he gets in Sheamus' face and tells him that he's a nobody and that his career is a joke. This actually does make Sheamus mad, and he tells Miz that the main difference between the two of them is that Miz likes to run his mouth and Sheamus likes to use his fists, and he attacks Miz, but Miz and Morrison attack him and they hit him with the briefcase and he gets beaten up a little bit. Then we get an interview with Drew McIntyre where he says that he delivers on his promises. He said that he was going to claymore Randy Orton's head off and get the WWE Championship back, and he did. He said that he was going to walk into Survivor Series and humble Roman Reigns, and in his opinion, he did. He watched Roman's arrogance turn to fear as he kicked out a spear after spear, and Roman may have won the battle, but Drew's gonna win the war when they face again. And then he turns his attention to Miz and says that the briefcase is the only thing keeping Miz relevant, and recommends that he doesn't cash it in, because if he does, then Drew is gonna fold Morrison in half, stick him in the briefcase, and then shove the briefcase up Miz's arse, which made me laugh. That was like, it's one of those insults that's got like a couple of stages to it and it just builds to, I'm gonna shove it up your arse. He phrases it as, I'm gonna shove it where the sun don't shine, but then he says, get it, got it, good, and that's what he was getting at, so I thought I'd just put it bluntly. So we get the tag match between Sheamus and Drew and Miz and Morrison. AJ Styles is on commentary because Miz wants him to help so that Miz can cash in on Drew. And as you'd expect, AJ talks plenty of trash, and towards the end we get a bit where Drew is getting ready for the Claymore, but Sheamus wants to tag him because he wants some of the heels, and Morrison ends up pulling Sheamus off the apron, and in the resulting melee AJ ends up hitting the phenomenal forearm. We get the DQ loss for the heels, and then AJ's like, cash in, and Miz and Morrison fanning around a bit too much, and Drew ends up getting back up and claymores them, and that's that. I'm really looking forward to TLC. At the minute, this main event WWE Championship scene seems really unpredictable. I really like all the different dynamics. Miz just wants to cash in and become champion. AJ wants Miz to cash in because he'll be way easier to beat than Drew will. And then you've got Sheamus in the background bubbling away. Is he going to betray him? Is he not? If he does, is he going to do it at TLC? Is that what's going to cost Drew the championship? Will Miz cash in? Will AJ manage to just beat him? There's so many different things that could happen when it comes to TLC that it feels really unpredictable, and I think they're doing a damn good job with it. Moving on to NXT Takeover War Games is this Sunday. Are you excited? I'm excited. I cannot wait. I love War Games. It's such a good takeover event. It's usually one of the best takeovers of the year. Somehow it doesn't feel like Hell in a Cell, where Hell in a Cell sometimes feels like they just have to cram feuds inside the cell. War Games always feels like it's justified. Even this year with the women's War Games match, it still feels like it's worthy of a War Games match, even though the main basis for it is the fact that Candice destroyed Shotzi's tank, which could be a stupid motivation, but they somehow managed to make it actually seem like the tank matters to Shotzi, and so this whole thing is justified. I cannot wait. I'm going to run through all of this, and then at the end I'm going to give my War Games predictions. Kicking things off with the women's War Games storyline, we get a segment with Shotzi Blackheart where she's building the war machine, and she is presented with a present by Rhea Ripley and Ember Moon. She looks at it, she says that she thinks that she's in love, and then declares that they're going to war. I didn't get a whole lot out of this because obviously I couldn't see what was going on, but I love Shotzi's cadence and her delivery. She's got this really charismatic delivery that I just really enjoy. Then we get Candice LeRae, who's just taunting Team Shotzi. She's saying that it's not even a real team. She's got 2 members and they're damaged goods, whereas she has got strength, resilience, unpredictability. She's got everything she needs to succeed at War Games. It made me laugh because strength, resilience and unpredictability sort of seems like 3 rejected members of Retribution, so that also just entertained me. Raquel Gonzalez says that after tonight, Shotzi Blackheart is going to feel like she got hit by a tank. Then we get the ladder match between Raquel Gonzalez and Shotzi Blackheart. There's all sorts going on in this match and there's no way I could run through all the cool spots, but there's shenanigans everywhere. Indy Hartwell keeps trying to get involved. At one point she goes up and Shotzi tries to stop her, and this allows Raquel Gonzalez to hit a clothesline that commentary says would have made JBL proud. But later on in the match, Io Shirai becomes the 4th member of Team Shotzi as she comes out and jumps on the back of Raquel Gonzalez, trying to put her to sleep to get revenge for being laid out last week. She's on Gonzalez's back as she's trying to climb the ladder. Eventually, everything spills to the outside. Io Shirai wipes out everyone and Shotzi climbs the ladder and gets the War Games advantage for her team. This Women's War Games match has got so much talent involved and I just can't wait for this weekend because it's going to be great. There's going to be so many mental spots and so many cool things coming out of it. It's just been built so quickly and so well, and I'm actually really surprised that they've managed to get it to this point where I'm extremely excited for it. Toni Storm turning heel was a great idea and a great addition for Team Candice. It made me laugh that Candice totally didn't see Io Shirai coming this week. She had already wiped her out. There was no way she was going to join Team Shotzi, and it just made me think of Kevin Owens last week. If only Kevin Owens had been here to tell Candice that she had basically handed Shotzi a 4th member, because Kevin Owens knows how everything works, because he's the Deadpool of NXT. Cameron Grimes is one of the best things in NXT right now. He's so hilarious, ridiculous, this stupid coward, but it's so great, it works so well. He ends up in a match against August Grey, which he wins with the cave-in, and afterwards he starts cutting a promo talking about how Lumis has made a mistake wanting to be strapped to him because Cameron Grimes is a real man. He starts whipping August Grey with the strap, and he's talking trash while he does, saying this is what happens when you get strapped to Cameron Grimes. And then Lumis launches an attack, turns the table and starts whipping Cameron. Then we get this amazing you get this amazing backstage bit with Mackenzie where she catches up to Grimes and she tries to talk to him, and he says that she always catches him at the worst moment, and he's selling with these ridiculous pain noises. He says that he's got lacerations that are so deep he doesn't think that he's going to be able to make it to TakeOver. Do you know what happens when lacerations get infected? It could get gangrene. And he's saying that he needs to go find Regal. He begs Mackenzie to go find Regal and call an ambulance. He's not going to make it to TakeOver. Just great. I love the fact that he switches from being really arrogant and cocky and then just this utter coward. There's this bit where he says that all he's been trying to do is mind his own business, but Lumis just won't leave him alone. And it's just great because it's like Grimes is one of those people that sticks his hand into a beehive and then wonders why the bees are stinging him, or he pokes the bear and then thinks that the bear is bullying him when the bear tries to rip him apart. It's so great. It was brilliant. I can't wait for their match at TakeOver because I feel like they're going to have some really great stuff and it's going to be hilarious. The rebuilding of the NXT Tag Division continues. Last week we got the return of the grizzled young veterans, and this week they were set to take on the team that they wiped out on their return, Ever-Rise. But this match doesn't happen because as Ever-Rise are making their entrance, Imperium wipe them out and the match becomes Imperium versus Grizzled Vets instead. But understandably so, Ever-Rise are pretty pissed off, and as the match is underway, Ever-Rise attack both teams, causing the DQ, they beat them both up and then run away. I'm really enjoying seeing the tag division get built back up again. You've got Birch and Lorcan as the tag champs, Drake and Dane were floating around, we haven't seen them in a few weeks but presumably they're still together, Breeze and Fandango, and then these three teams of the Grizzled Vets, Imperium and Ever-Rise. Just a really solid rebuild of the tag division. It was struggling for a little while, but it seems like it's getting back on track and I'm really happy about it. North American champion Leon Roth was supposed to have a tag match with Kurt Stallion, but Legado del Fantasma attacked Kurt Stallion and he ends up not being medically cleared. Since Damian Priest has motivation to make sure that Roth gets to Takeover, he gets Regal to put him in the match instead, so we get Leon Roth and Damian Priest versus Legado del Fantasma. Priest is determined to try and win the match by himself, but his knee gets worked over and eventually Roth gets the hot tag and runs wild for a bit. In the end, Priest is going for the Reckoning, Roth tags himself in, Priest does the Reckoning, and then Roth hits the Frog Splash and picks up the win for him and Priest. It's worth noting that Johnny Gargano was on commentary, but he didn't really get involved. The one thing that sort of built to the North American Championship match at TakeOver was the fact that there was some ghost face figures behind Gargano. Not just the one, two of them. So that's interesting. Johnny apparently has some sort of dastardly plan for the championship match, which is bad news for Priest and Roth. I really like that Priest has taken Roth under his wing and is sort of this begrudging mentor. This wasn't necessarily what I expected this week in terms of building to that triple threat, but it was still an enjoyable segment, and the fact that Gargano has this dastardly plan was revealed, so that's that, and I still really enjoyed it. We get a Thatcher's Thatchcan style segment where Timothy Thatcher says that plenty of people lose matches via distraction. Music hits, people jump up on the apron, people come to ringside, and before you know it, people are losing a match. So he's going to teach his students how to deal with distractions. Unfortunately, he doesn't do a great job of that because Tommaso Ciampa shows up. Thatcher says that he's got no problem with Ciampa, and Ciampa calls Thatcher a disappointment. Again, Thatcher's like, I've got no problem with you, but they end up fighting. One of Thatcher's students jumps Ciampa, which allows Thatcher to lay a beatdown upon Ciampa. If these two get added to TakeOver, it's going to be a sleeper match for match of the night, because these two are so great. It could just be one of those really good matches that didn't even need a build. I personally do hope that it gets added. What the hell is going on with Xia Li and Boa? This segment was so strange, okay? So I have no idea what was really going on, but it sounded like Xia Li was crying and getting dunked underwater. Just basically sounded like she was being tortured. It was kind of disturbing. It felt a little bit wrong, but also kind of intriguing. Where are they going with this? Who is going to be this Grand Master that's in charge of them, that is apparently now torturing them for losing? I have no idea, and I'm not going to stick on it for too long, but weird as hell. What the fuck? We get a special look at the Undisputed Era following them on a nice night out. Adam Cole says that the last few weeks have not been a great time for them. They've been running NXT for years, basically since they debuted, but they've never been tested like this before. They've never had to fight from underneath, and it's time to remind themselves of what got them there. They say that the Kings of NXT are going to be locked inside a giant cage with 2 rings and 4 of the greatest in NXT history, and they're extremely pissed off. it's time to whip some ass. Pat McAfee answers this later in the show, where he says that he's spent a lot of time and money putting this team together. In fact, more money than most of the audience will ever see or have in their life. And that's not counting the money he spent on a Mercedes for a guy that's not even there right now. He says on Sunday, while we're all watching from the basements in our mother's houses, he wants us to picture being a member of Undisputed Era so that we can feel every bit of punishment that he dishes out. He then says that he knows that we all want to see him get ripped apart, but he's got 3 badasses, and Pete Dunne says that they're going to end the Undisputed Era. I find it pretty impressive that in such a short amount of time they've managed to build the Kings of NXT into a team that feels genuinely dangerous to one of the most dominant factions in NXT history. The Undisputed Era really have been running NXT for years now, and this feels like it could easily be the end for them. In fact, it's sort of a shame that it's not a loser leaves town match, because as much as I don't want the Undisputed Era to be gone from NXT, as much as I don't want them to be on the main roster, this really feels like it could be an end to the Undisputed Era if they did it right. And I just think that that's really impressive, because the Kings of NXT haven't been around for that long. In all fairness, I feel like this promo from Pat was probably the least impressive that he's had in the last few weeks. I felt like it was just a bit of a standard, you people suck, I'm richer than you, that sort of thing, haha, you all live in your mother's basements and that sort of stuff. It was a bit cheap, but at the same time, it's just one of those, you can't always have the strongest promo. So in terms of the actual match, I can't wait. It feels like the Kings are an actual threat to the Undisputed Era, and I really want to see the Undisputed Era just kick some ass and actually come out with a win here, because I don't want them to lose to this horrible, nasty little heel team. I'm not going to lie to you guys, I am struggling with these predictions. I have no idea where to go with them, but let's run through them and I'll try to come to a decision. In terms of the women's War Games match, I'd love to see Team Shotzi come out with the win, but Toni Storm is on Team Candice. She recently turned heel, and that team secretly has a one-woman advantage, because even though they've been pretending that she's injured, they've got Indy Hartwell who can get involved, and Team Candice can sort of have a cheat to win sort of situation. So Team Candice comes out with the win from the women's War Games match. Cameron Grimes versus Dexter Lumis in a strap match. I feel like this is a pretty easy one. It's Dexter Lumis. The North American Championship match, I'm going to go with Johnny Gargano. He's got the ghost faces, he's got this dastardly plan, and I feel like Sunday is going to finally be the night that both members of Team Gargano have a successful night. The men's War Games match, I feel like, really needs to be the Kings of NXT. They've not been around for long. Birch and Lorcan have only just started having these pushes as the tag champs. Pete Dunne's only just returned. They just need this win, so I feel like I'm going to go with the Kings of NXT there. And if Thatcher and Ciampa gets added, I'm going to go with Ciampa. I'm not sure on that one at all. So my winners row is Team Candice, Dexter Lumis, Johnny Gargano, Kings of NXT, and Tommaso Ciampa. Well, that's it for this week, guys. If you've got any thoughts on this week's topics, drop them in the comment section. Let me know who you think the winners row will be for TakeOver. I'll see you for the War Games review, but until then, take care. I'm off, and you should have a good one. Hey up guys, I'm Mason, the blind wrestling fan, and this is the WITD Weekly podcast number 9. If you enjoy this episode, you know what to do.